everybody? Welcome back to the Bay Bolts channel. The Tampa Bay Lightning have a 2-0 series lead over the Carolina Hurricanes after winning game two, 2-1 in Raleigh, bringing that series lead back to Amalie Arena. My name is Michael Wax, joined as always with my co-host Jake Ricker. Jake, a very tense final couple of minutes, but a win nonetheless. How you doing?
Michael, I'm doing great. If you would have told me that the Lightning would have been up 2-0 after playing two road games in Carolina, I would have told you that you were crazy and that was not happening. But here we are up 2-0, heading back to Tampa. How can you not be doing fantastic right now?
Exactly. And I think that a lot of Lightning fans echo what you're saying in terms of it's more of a surprise that they're up 2-0, not because the Lightning are not a good team, but because Carolina is a very good team. And a lot of people expected that if Carolina would have win maybe a game or two, then it would go back to Amalie either 2-0 Carolina with that home ice advantage or a 1-1 series tie. But ultimately, the Tampa Bay Lightning do have that road edge. They've been fantastic on the road in these playoffs, going 4-1 so far. But let's get into game two. The first period, overall, not a bad period for either team. It was very evenly matched in terms of what we saw. The Lightning tended to get outshot at the end of that period. Andre Vasilevsky had to make a couple of big saves, but they started the first period off much better than they did in game one. And ultimately, I think that surprised the Hurricanes a little bit because they were on their toes. Now, in terms of like the scoring chances they generated, not a ton of great ones in that first period, but it always helps to get shots on net, as we'll talk about later. And overall, in the first period, not much to complain about coming out with the 0-0 score.
Yeah, no, anytime you can be 0-0 against another really good team, you're going to take that period and be happy with it. You're not down. That's the important thing there. But you're right. I mean, both teams I thought played pretty well for the most part. It was a close, tightly contested game, which is the kind of game we saw. We saw it in the first game as well. There were definitely some times where I thought Carolina looked like the better team. I think if you looked at overall throughout the whole game, you could argue Carolina was the better team, even though they lost the game. They played very well. They did. There's a couple points in the first period where I thought they were playing better, but the Lightning had opportunities and took advantage of some situations when they got them. So, 0-0 going into the second period. I mean, that's a good period right there with the way these games have been going because with both these games, it was basically first goal wins is essentially what it was. Both games ended up being 2-1, but whoever gets that first goal is looking in a really good spot. So to be 0-0 at the end of one, you have to be happy with that.
Yeah, and then you go into the second period. You mentioned whoever gets that first goal is going to end up winning the game, and that's been the case these first two games. And the Lightning finally getting some contributions from their second line that's not on the power play. The even strength 5-on-5 numbers for the second line have not been great in these playoffs so far. We've seen Anthony Cirelli finally get on the board. Steven Stamkos has been mostly and some goals 5-on-5. Alex Killorn has been mostly power play as well. Well, in this play, Steven Stamkos and Anthony Cirelli are hounds behind the net. They get the puck and they dish it out to Alex Killorn. He spins at the blue line and fires on, and somehow the puck finds its way through Alex Nedeljkovic. Now, this was not the best goal that the Lightning have ever scored, but once again, if it's the first goal, they'll take it, especially when they got outshot 13-5 in that period. And overall, getting the lead is great. They did give up some really, really good chances against them. Especially there was a shorthanded breakaway chance that uh, just Andre Vasilevsky with the poke check of the century, basically. And it was very heart palpitating for a couple of those Canes chances, but the Lightning get out of it with a 1-0 lead.
Hey, put the puck on net and good things will happen. When you're in the playoffs in these tight games, you'll take any goal you can get. Doesn't matter if it's a good goal. And that's one thing that I really love about the Lightning this year is that there's been plenty of times where Florida and Carolina both outplayed the Lightning and held the Lightning to just a few chances. But the Lightning are doing such a good job at capitalizing on the few opportunities that they get. So yeah, they may have four shots in a period, but guess what? they may score on one or two of those chances and be up on the scoreboard. And at the end of the day, the only stat that matters is that scoreboard because if you're ahead in that one, you win the game and you're potentially moving on to the next round. So Killorn takes advantage. He just puts the puck on net. There's a screen in front by Anthony Cirelli and the I can't say his name, so I'm just going to go with the Carolina goaltender. He couldn't see the puck and it got into the back of the net. So great job on that play. And it's really good to see that second line buzzing in this game. As for that poke check by Vasilevsky, when I first saw that play, all I'm thinking is, great, they're going to tie it up 1-1 here. This is unfortunate. And then I thought he missed the shot. And then, as you mentioned, upon the replay, what a poke check by Andre Vasilevsky. I mean, just give the man the Vezina now. I mean, it's just the Vesna and the Conn Smythe, I should say. It's ridiculous how good he is. I mean, he is just outstanding. I don't know where the Lightning would be without him. He has been stellar in both these games. He's been standing on his head, and he comes through big again in that second period. And the Lightning are up 1-0. So very happy for me, even though Carolina had a lot of good moments in that period.
Yeah, and you go into the third period, and the Lightning decided that they were going to play defensive hockey just 100% of the time. They got outshot 11-4. Carolina had a lot of really good chances, but it would be the Lightning that get on the board once again, that second line putting in work, as Victor Hedman actually looked like Victor Hedman on this play with a fantastic outlet pass to Anthony Cirelli. Brady Shea could not corral it. Cirelli got past him and roofed a backhander over Nedeljkovic's shoulder. His third of the playoffs, Hedman's 10th assist already. A really, really solid goal for the Lightning to give them that 2-goal advantage. And I don't know about you, and we'll get to the Carolina melee at the last 2 minutes in a little bit, but that seemed to be the moment where I could finally breathe a little bit because you had that multi-goal lead, even though you're surrendering chances against, you get that multi-goal lead, and all of a sudden things become a lot easier, especially when you are a good defensive team.
Yeah, no question about that. When you get a 2-goal lead, you feel much better. It's the insurance marker. Everybody talks about, okay, we got one. Now let's get that insurance marker because just in case something crazy happens and they happen to get one, you still feel a little bit better. There's no question about that. So I definitely could breathe more. And that was a great shot by Anthony Cirelli. Fantastic backhand. I mean, it was a very impressive shot to get that puck in the back of the net, and it was a huge goal. Anthony Cirelli, who he struggled basically all regular season. A lot of people were saying, when is he going to break out? When is he going to finally be able to get that goal? Because he could not buy a goal for the longest time. He's been playing really well as of late, and he's been scoring goals as well, which is really good to see for a guy like him. So fantastic job by him and that whole second line, as we mentioned. And we're lining up 2-0 in the third period, and you're feeling pretty good. But then Carolina, man, there was no lack of effort for Carolina. They gave it their all.
Yeah, when Rod Brind'Amour, the head coach, said after the game, I don't think we were outplayed. I think you could say that that's correct. Like the Lightning are heading back to Amalie with a 2-0 series lead, but in several instances, not necessarily in the entire game, but in several instances, the Carolina Hurricanes just flat out dominated the Lightning. And that was the case in these final couple of minutes where pull the goalie, 6-on-5, Alex Killorn can't get to his guy on time, and Andrei Svechnikov scores. And that play has been given up, I believe, 3 different times between the Carolina and Florida series where they're battling along the boards. A forward does not pick up someone that's charging to the front of the net, and they get won by Andre Vasilevsky. There's nothing that you can ask the goaltender to do. Those saves are like 20 bell saves right there. You have to be defensively responsible. Well, going on to the end of the game, the Lightning were incredibly defensively responsible. There were a couple of really heart palpitating moments in terms of saves that you didn't even know that Andre Vasilevsky knew where the puck was, but he still got a pad or a glove or a blocker on it. And the Lightning end up winning this game 2-1, a very surprising win. But at the end of the day, the better team will always win. And say what you want about maybe Carolina outplaying them, but the Lightning were the better team because they took advantage of the mistakes of Carolina.
That's the perfect way to put it right there. They may have been outplayed, but they took advantage of the mistakes and capitalized on their opportunities, and they were up 2-1 at the end of the day. By the way, you mentioned the players getting the puck in the slot after a battle behind the boards. It almost happened for the Lightning. Jan Ruda had a golden opportunity, and he beat the goaltender, but just hit the crossbar, which was unfortunate. But yeah, hey, another great game by the Lightning. I didn't I said in the series preview that the Lightning should not play defensive hockey because they tended not play well. But they've kind of had to play that way in this series so far, and they've done it well, which is really good to see. They did a good job in that third period, eliminating the chances, as you mentioned, despite them getting one with the goalie pulled. And hey, remember you said you could breathe a little easier after that second goal. That's exactly why, because that goal ended up not really mattering because they had that insurance marker, which was big. So 2-0 series lead. I mean, really, you can't complain no matter how you got there. That having a 2-0 series lead and coming back home now is just huge. It is so big for the Lightning, and they're in such a good spot. All they have to do is win one at home now, and they're up 3-1, and they've got a chokehold on this series. So fantastic job by the Lightning. Michael, I do quickly though want to talk about Nikita Kucherov in this game. Kucherov has obviously been absolutely stellar in these playoffs, and he has made people just scream cap circumvention at the top of their lungs because he's played so good. And not because he was ready to go long before, because he had dedication and he was ready to go. He was working hard and made sure he wanted to be back and ready to go when he could play. But I digress. But Kucherov did not have a good game in this game. This was by far his worst game. It was only one game, so there's no reason to freak out or anything like that. But I do think it needs to be said that he did not have a good game. He had a lot of bad passes in this game. He had a couple opportunities where he just wasn't able to get good shots off. He also made a play that I really don't like. I hate seeing our players make this. It was a situation where Kucherov was behind the net. He kind of stuck his leg out and tripped one of the Carolina players. It's kind of a iffy, dirty play. I don't like that at all by Kucherov. You don't want to see, you never want our, I know a lot of people will say the Lightning are dirty, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to see that from our guys. I do not want to see that. Absolutely. It's not a good play. And I'll sit there and tell you that it definitely should have been penalized. No question about it. But hopefully Kucherov can bounce back and have a much better game in game three because he's been stellar for the Lightning this whole playoffs.
Yeah, Nikita Kucherov has been great so far, and one of the big things that I saw last night, and it was connected to Kucherov in a way, because Kucherov is great, but let's not forget who drives that line is Braden Point. I thought that Braden Point was a lot. He was off like that whole game, and he only played I think 17, 18 minutes that game. Usually he's in the 21, 22 mark. But when I put that question out in the air of is it just me or does Braden Point seem uh, off? A couple of people said, yeah, that's because Carolina has done a great job of limiting Braden Point and Nikita Kucherov. And once Braden Point is limited, Nikita Kucherov has a much more, and I don't mean this in any disrespectful way, but much more limited skill set because his main guy has been taken out of the play. Carolina has done a great job of that. It's up to Andre Palat, who did play the most amount of minutes of anyone on the team at, I believe it was 18-28. It's up to him to generate the offense on that line. And as we saw, first round, he generated some offense, but also Florida did not cover Braden Points and Nikita Kucherov all that well. So it really is up to how Carolina manages their defense. Kucherov will have to find ways, and Point will have to find ways to get around that. And if they do, then the Lightning are going to be fine because they already have secondary scoring. If they don't, then hopefully the secondary scoring keeps up. So, as far as Kucherov's dirty play in the second period, not a fan of it. Wish that he would take that out of his game. And let's not pretend like this is the first time this has happened to Kucherov in the playoffs. He had that empty net slash in game 5 against JG Pageau. He had that board or that cross checking to the boards in the Columbus series in game 2. He's not a dirty player, but when the playoffs come, he definitely shows a side of him that I do wish he would take out of his game. and focus more on uh, the scoring aspect. And that comes with being frustrated because Carolina has done such a great job.
Yeah, there's no good. You're right. A lot of credit needs to go to Carolina because they have done a very, very good job. But hopefully, Kucherov can bounce back in the next game. And luckily for the Lightning, now as you mentioned, they've got a ton of depth scoring too. So even if you take away Kucherov and Point, we still got plenty of guys that can score on you, and we got guys that can keep the puck out of the net. That's one of the reasons why this team is so good.
Yep. And before we wrap up this video, we want to get to your fan questions. Make sure to reply to us on Twitter after the games to get your fan questions read on our videos. So we only have one today. This one's from Connor McMinn. He says, I saw this last year, but it looks like the Lightning changed their structure from series to series. They play a lot more of an offensive type game against the Panthers, and now they're trying their best to lock up defensively against the Canes. Do you see the same thing I see? Jake, what are your thoughts?
I don't think they're intentionally changing their structure. I think they'd like to play a more offensive game, which is typically what they still try to do. But I think they definitely had to adapt in both these series. The Panthers series, not only was it offensive, but it was a very gritty, push and shoving type of game, a very different style of play. And then you look at the Carolina series; both these teams are built offensively, I would argue. And both teams, when they go on the attack, the other team tries to play really defensive and try to shut down that offense. So I think that's what you're seeing in these series. So I don't think it's an intentional thing by the Lightning. Like I would imagine in round three, no matter who they're playing, every game they're going to try to play their offensive type of style, fast pace, quickly moving. I think that's their game plan every single night. But they have had to make adjustments to how the game is going and what opponents they're playing. So they definitely played a more defensive series, like especially in the third period in this one, which is fine when it works because it's working right now. But I would imagine that their goal at the end of the day is to play offensive when they can.
Yeah, but one of the things that I look at when we look at playoff to playoff is sometimes the offense just isn't going to win it for you. And the Lightning made it a point after 2019 to lock up their defensive game. Victor Hedman said as much, Ryan McDonough said as much, John Cooper said as much, and that ultimately resulted in the Stanley Cup. So I think they are aware that they can play both type of games. But when you have a team like Carolina, you're not going to get a ton of offensive chances unless you expend some of your defensive energy. And if you expend some of your defensive energy, then you're not going to stop them on some of their offensive chances. It really is a balance between the two. They played offensive against Carolina because that series was littered with power plays. The power play was clicking 5-on-5. Carolina, or excuse me, Florida had some absolutely horrid defensive plays, and Lightning just took advantage of them. This series, have you noticed a bad defensive play, maybe besides the Brady Shea incident before the Sorelli goal?
Like
Like
one or two.
even so, like that's a 50-50 puck and Sorelli gets to it. Now, Nedeljkovic probably wants a couple of those shots back, like the Goudreau shot, probably the Killorn shot as well. But the defense around him has been very good. And so the Lightning have taken advantage of the Carolina Hurricanes mistakes, but they haven't sacrificed their defensive game, which has been really good. And it helps that the Lightning have the best goaltender in the world.
No question.
So, Jake, unless you have anything for us, that is going to do it for this one. Anything else for us on this game two win?
No, I think that pretty much sums it up. Like I said, 2-0 series lead headed back to Tampa Bay. I cannot wait to hear our highest crowd yet at Amalie Arena. I believe it's about 70-75% capacity. Hopefully, we're getting really close to full capacity as well. So, cannot wait to see those fans back at Amalie cheering on the boys as they look to get a big 3-0 or 3-1 series lead, depending on how these games play out.
Exactly. Guys, that is going to do it for us on this edition of Quick Strike. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Comment down below. Let us know what you thought about this game. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Bay_Bolts. We do the live game coverage every single game on Twitter. So come hang out with us there. Come ask us questions, and we will get them on this show as well. But guys, that is going to do it for us on this edition of Quick Strike. For Jake Ricker, I'm Michael Wax. Thank you so much for watching. And remember, your Tampa Bay Lightning are up 2-0 in the Carolina Hurricanes series.
Go Bolts.